a Christian had asked me to explain why I believed in the resurrection. I was trying to keep my voice down, but of course, the lower I put my voice, the quieter the table became. And suddenly a student thumped the table, all the spoons and forks jumped, and he said, "That's the most preposterous nonsense I've ever heard. How can you believe that rubbish?" He said to me, "Do you know, my parents shoved this stuff down my throat, and I don't want it." And I said, "That's the first honest thing you've said to me tonight." Half an hour later, became a Christian. And he has served the Lord for the last 50 years. You see, I got to the real issue. His anger was an outburst against his parents. It had nothing to do with intellectual arguments. So
Richard Dawkins sat down with theoretical physicist John Greene to discuss belief in God. Dawkins answers why he doesn't believe in God, and in fact why he believes that God as an answer to primary questions works against the scientific enterprise. But as he's answering this, he also reveals sort of a answer beneath the answer that gets a little bit into the psychology of unbelief or the psychology of atheism. I break down some of it in this video, but then I also pitch to John Lennox, who gives, I think, a very, very interesting answer to this question. When he's asked, what is the best argument for God? It's all going to make sense in a second, but I think that there's a very important lesson inside of this interaction that Richard Dawkins has and a clue towards the psychology of unbelief. Let's dive in.
Sure, there could be a God that's behind it all, and what we're doing as physicists, chemists, biologists, working out God's laws. And if that's how it is, I am thrilled to be part of that noble journey. I then add by saying, look, there's no evidence for that. I don't see any reason to believe that. And if what we're doing is just working out the laws of physics or chemistry or biology, and that's all that you need for a universe, I'm thrilled to be part of that journey. So the bottom line is, from a sociological, from a historical viewpoint, religion's very, very interesting, but it's kind of profoundly uninteresting to answer the deep questions, because I feel like all I'm doing is replacing one mysterious set of words framed scientifically with another set of equally mysterious words that are framed non-scientifically. Yeah. Now,
okay, before we get to Richard Dawkins' response to this, which is in and of itself extremely telling, I just want to highlight really quickly here that it is assumed within what he's saying that the deep questions are the questions of mechanism, simply how do things work. To me, a part of what is a deep question would be, what in the world are we all doing here? And I think that the why question is as deep, if not deeper, than the how question. So I just want to underscore, I think, the materialistic worldview that is kind of embedded within what he's saying. And I'm going to contend against that right away, that just answering the how questions is not exhausting the answering of the deep questions, and that deep questions must also entail the why questions in order to have a complete answer. So let's continue.
Oh, I should say, after I say that, I always apologize, because I am all for hedging your bets. I'm not beyond that at all. What do you think of that view?
Newton thought that he was working out God's laws, and he was demonstrating the glory of God's mind when he worked out the laws of mechanics and so on. I'm not so at ease with that as you seem to be, because it does seem to me that if there is a supernatural, superhuman intelligence that worked it all out, in a way that undermines the entire scientific enterprise, because we are, maybe an evolutionary biologist feels this more strongly, the whole enterprise of evolutionary biology is to explain how you get prodigious complexity and design from virtually nothing. I mean, we hand over to physicists when we can go beyond the virtually nothing to the absolutely nothing. But if you start from quite an advanced level, bacteria, and work up to mammals and humans, we have a working theory which we know is true, which explains how you can go from great simplicity to prodigious complexity. And finally, to the sort of complexity which is capable of designing things, of creating things, of working out how to do things. Well, if you are suddenly going to insert a designing machine, a creator, an intelligence at the root of the universe, you've just undermined your entire enterprise, because your entire enterprise has been to explain how you get to something complicated enough to do design.
But even if that
Let me just pause really quick here to say, I don't know if I'm the only one that just simply doesn't follow that logic at all. How does it undermine anything to posit a architect behind where we see design? How is that in any sense an undermining of the scientific effort? First of all. Second of all, as he mentioned at the beginning here, actually Newton and basically all of the great scientists of the past expected law in nature because they believed in a lawgiver. And so they were expecting a coherence to the universe, and that led them into the great scientific discoveries because of their belief in God. How is God a undermining of the scientific process when, apart from God as an explanation, you can't even adequately answer the how questions to begin with, and you also have zero answer to the why question? Let's continue.
being just set in place the laws and then stood back?
Even that, even the deistic God who sets the laws in place and withdraws, if those laws, if the implication is that those laws were cunningly designed, cunningly crafted, as many people think they were, so that atoms should come into existence, so that chemistry should come into existence, so that stars should come into existence, so that nuclear reactions in stars could produce the elements, so that they'd explode and we'd get a suitable chemistry to make life and then the origin of life and so on. If the deistic God thought all that through and set up the laws of physics, then he would have to be damn clever. He would have to be the physicist to end all physicists. I don't care if he then withdraws. He needs an explanation in his own right.
Yes, God would be the physicist of all physicists. For surely, having created both physics and all other physicists, he would maintain within himself that higher level of knowledge.
And it seems to me that the noble scientific enterprise is to start from as near nothing as you can get.
Yeah.
Richard Dawkins, for one, finds God to be uninteresting and irrelevant, and I think that is an interesting fact that should be looked at alongside of everything else. So here's John Lennox unpacking the psychology of unbelief.
What do you feel is the strongest argument supporting the existence of God? Well, strong for whom? That's an important question. If somebody's coming to me broken-hearted because they've just lost a relative through illness, there's no point in saying, my dear, just look at the fine-tuning of nature. Now, I mean that seriously. I was asked by an atheist professor of philosophy at Oxford to address his students, whom he told me were all atheists like him. And he said, we're going to grill you, but I hope you're going to use your strongest argument. Well, I said, if you know what my strongest argument is going to be, you'd better give it to me. So he said, if I'm ever to become a Christian, the argument that would convince me most is fine-tuning. It's strong for some people. Other people don't care sixpence about it. They're not interested in it. They don't understand its power and its force, which is great. People need all kinds of different arguments. Some need an intellectual argument because they're bothered. There's something they don't understand, and they need facts. For example, somebody's bothered about the existence of Jesus. That's very simply dealt with. All they have to do is read a bit of ancient history. Other people are bothered because they are immersed in various aspects of the problem of evil and pain. And you don't deal with that by discussing Genesis 1. Now, I mean that quite seriously. one of the questions here, which I might as well deal with as we're going through, is what's the hardest argument you face? Well, the answer to that's obvious. It's the problem of evil and pain. That is the hardest question any of us face. And we need to think about it, because if we've nothing to say about it, we're as bad as the atheists. They have, by definition, nothing to say. Because atheism is a hopeless philosophy. By definition, there is no ultimate hope. And that's why the Bible talks about it. At the heart of our Christianity is not a set of physical laws, there's a cross. And that is answering a big question. It's telling us at the very least that God didn't remain distant from the problem of suffering, but himself has become part of it. That's a very different kind of answer than arguments from nature or the philosophy of science. So there are all kinds of things. It depends who's asking the question. And we need to be sensitive. You see, sometimes, very often I find, you don't answer the question, you answer the questioner. You try to find out where they're coming from, where they're hurting, what the problem is. I never forget first learning this at Cambridge in college at dinner. They used to provoke me, of course, because they liked mocking my Irish Christianity. And one night a chap, but he was a very big chap as far as I remember, and a Christian had asked me to explain why I believed in the resurrection. I was trying to keep my voice down, but of course the lower I put my voice, the quieter the table became. And suddenly a student thumped the table, all the spoons and forks jumped, and he said, "That's the most preposterous nonsense I've ever heard. How can you believe that rubbish?" So I turned around and said, "Well," I said, "you feel really strongly about this." He said, "I do." I said, "Tell me, what did you make of Paul's evidence when you read it?" He said, "What?" I said, "Well, I presume you feel strongly because you've got an evidence base." "Well, did Paul talk about it?" I said, "Come round for coffee." So half an hour later, he said to me, "Do you know, my parents shoved this stuff down my throat, and I don't want it." Now I said, "That's the first honest thing you've said to me tonight." Half an hour later, became a Christian. And he has served the Lord for the last 50 years. You see, I got to the real issue. His anger was an outburst against his parents. It had nothing to do with intellectual arguments. So I'm trying to help you see that this question has no single argument.
What is the best argument for God or for the existence of God? The answer is it really depends on who you're talking to, because each individual person is bringing to the table their own obstacle. It might be something more intellectual, like maybe they're not aware of the relationship between design and designer and information and intelligence. Maybe they're not aware of the unanswered questions within a purely materialist model relating to the origin of life or the origin of the universe. Maybe they haven't really thought through that it's more coherent to understand that mind comes from mind than that mind comes from matter, and so on. Maybe, though, it isn't something of an intellectual or philosophical nature. Maybe it is something more personal. Maybe it is something even more emotional or psychological that is acting like as the biggest obstacle to belief. And so I think that John Lennox here is highlighting something important, which is, what is the individual's question? And the answer to that question will become the best argument for God for that person. And I think that's in some sense also what makes a channel like this so difficult. And I can sometimes see how what one person might need to hear is of a more, psycho-emotional nature, and then what another person might need to hear is a purely scientific. And so it's difficult because if you in a sense misfire, then someone can think, oh great, there's no answer to X because the answer that was given in this particular video was to Y. And so for whatever it's worth, I would just say stick around, because I'm trying to, on this channel, address things in a multifaceted manner, understanding that what John Lennox has said here is so extremely true, that there are a wide variety of different answers to a wide variety of different questions, and that ultimately truth will out. And if a person is desiring God, if you are desiring God, if you're actually seeking God, I have total and full confidence that both the intellectual and the emotional pieces can come together, and there can be a holistic, satisfactory answer given. But better than that, there is a person waiting for you. And that is the big difference between true Christianity and an ideology, is that it's not just getting the right answers on the test. It is coming to know the person of Christ, coming to know God as a personal being. You exist because you are wanted. There is a creator behind the creation, and he has made himself knowable, and he has made himself available. He has given us a name by which to call him. That is the big difference. We're not just talking about ideology or philosophy. We're talking about a personal God who desires personal relationship with you, so much so that he has gone all the way to death on a cross, creating an atonement for the wrong done by humanity, creating a bridge and a doorway through which we can enter into relationship with a holy God as innocent people by the blood of Jesus Christ. So this is the stuff that, we need to kind of unpack, and I could spend more time on it in this video, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Also, if you guys like these types of conversations, you might also like the Wisdom Society. The link to that is in the description. It's basically an online community that I've created because these types of videos create conversations. And I've noticed that in the comment section of YouTube, people are starting to unpack big ideas and talk, but then it's not the best place for that. And also there's not really a lot of attention that can be given to deal with the questions that you guys have in a more community-based and holistic manner. And so the Wisdom Society basically brings in experts that are on this channel and allows you guys to connect with them directly. We have a book club. We have weekly prayer meetings. We have a lot of different components to that. So if you want to know more, go ahead and click the link in the description to find out more about the Wisdom Society. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.